My caffeine intake is unhealthy. Like
is it?
Yeah, I wish it wasn't, but it really is. Like it's usually double espresso in the morning, like latte. Then I have at Steelers, I usually get there and immediately have a coffee. Then we have lunch and I have a coffee. Then I come home at 3:00 and have another single shot of espresso.
So man, daddy, let's go. Oh, welcome to another Thursday edition of Scoop City. You know what that means? It's our Thursday road trip. There's only 2 teams remaining, but we'll make multiple stops. Don't forget to like and subscribe because the information right here has been outstanding of late and it continues to come your way. We're going to break down both sides of the Super Bowl. We're going to talk to Michael-Shawn Dugar in Seattle. We're going to talk to Chad Graff with the New England Patriots. We're also going to talk about both of these head coaches, defensive head coaches. What trend did that show our own Zach Kiefer? He wrote a brilliant article in The Athletic about it. Him and I will discuss a bunch of what's going on with the coaching cycle and what trends we're seeing from some of these teams hiring new coaches and the ones that will be hiring ones possibly next year, as well as Mike McCarthy, who was hired this year back in his hometown of Pittsburgh. Mike DeFabo is going to break that down brilliantly. He was there for the press conference. He tells us how many family members were actually even there for Mike McCarthy. It's more than you think. But it is a Thursday road trip, so let's hit the road and let's get to both of these Super Bowl teams. All right, once again on our Thursday road trip around the NFL, he's been a regular on here. Michael-Shawn Dugar joins us. And Mike, this was proposed to me by some other people around the league, and I was kind of curious what your take is. Who is most responsible for the Seattle Seahawks being in this Super Bowl 60 game?
Ooh, that's a fun one.
Right?
I guess if I had to make a pie chart, go back to elementary school or whenever we learned to do pie charts, John Schneider would probably have the biggest slice of pie. He hired Mike McDonald. He was really set on hiring Mike. That was his number one. So he wanted to hire Mike. He gave him the roster to get this done. He got the ball rolling on a lot of the big moves that got the roster the way it is, with some missteps along the way, as GMs tend to have. But as soon as we're done recording this, I'm going to finish an article on how this roster was built. And a lot of them are risks that John was able to take, moves that John was willing to make in collaboration with his guys and collaboration with the coaching staff. But he set the vision for what they wanted this team to be, what they wanted the team to look like, what they wanted the environment to feel like. And a lot of that's to John. Now it's not like 80% John, 20% everyone else. Of course. It's very much Mike McDonald, and it's a player driven league. So you got to give credit to the players, and Jody Allen writes the checks. I think John would get the biggest slice of that pie for whether the Seahawks were in Super Bowl 60.
Yeah, he's done an outstanding job. With that said, and all the pieces, and as you're putting this piece together, and make sure everybody goes to The Athletic and checks it out, when did you start getting the sense in all of the levers that maybe John was pulling and then Mike was doing as well, putting this together, that you were kind of steadfast going, okay, this is a Super Bowl team? When did that happen for you, Mike?
It was gradual, right? So the first thing I was looking at was Sam. Okay, how does Sam look? But the problem is, no one doubts that Sam can play well in September, October, November, and maybe the first couple of weeks of December. So there was only so much I was going to glean from him lighting it up in camp or even playing well the first couple of months of the season. So I was like, okay, what else can I look at? Well, let's start with Jax. Can he be the wide receiver one guy that I've seen DK be for so long, and that I saw Tyler and Doug Baldwin kind of assume that role? Can that be Jax? Well, by the time I flew home from Green Bay and joined practice in August, I was like, yeah, okay, no one can cover that guy. I felt very confident that Jax is the guy. No one can cover him. I felt very good about that. So then, all right, now I need to evaluate Sam and Clint Kubiak, because those are the new pieces around here. Because I was not one to believe, all right, you just run wide zone, all of a sudden you're a physical team. A bunch of people run wide zone. It's not the magical elixir that gives you a physical dominant run game. And that took some time for that to build. So in the defense, I was always confident, and I was never worried about that. So by the time we get to I want to say December-ish, and the run game starting to click. I think Ken ran for 100 yards in week 16. Sam Darnold started to calm down a little bit late in the year into January. So that's probably when they had that overtime win against the Rams, when I was like, okay, Sam can do this. He's not seeing ghosts. He's just a normal quarterback who may make mistakes. And then the next 4 weeks, they ran the ball well. Said, okay, now I see why people want to hire this Kubiak guy. Now I see why everyone wants the wide zone principle thing. And then I think in week 18, they had an 8-minute drive or something like that to basically salt the game away down at Levi Stadium. I said, okay, these guys are playing championship ball, because I'm one of those people that believes those are the grown man drives in the NFL. Yes, the great highlight reel, I threw a game-winning catch or whatever play. Those are great. Those are fantastic. But what the Seahawks did in the NFC Championship is what I knew they would have to do at some point, which is why I was so critical of the run game. Can you just hold the ball? Sometimes that's it. Look how the two teams who got here, James, look how they got here. The Patriots and the Seahawks. They both held the ball from the other team and got first downs, and the game was over. Sometimes it's not a game-winning kick or a game-winning touchdown pass or whatever. Sometimes you just got to be able to hold the ball, and that's a level of physicality and clutchness required. And I knew the Seahawks had that when I saw it in Week 18, and so it's no surprise that they were able to deliver that to get here.
Yeah, great point. That 9-minute, 31-second drive by the Patriots in the second half that only goes 65 yards, but with that drive, they wear out a very, very good defense. The weather turns during that drive, and the whole game essentially turns because they held the ball at the start of the second half. You're exactly right. With that offense I just mentioned with New England, the left side of that offensive line has certainly had some of their struggles this season at guard and at tackle with Will Campbell. So, My question to you, Mike, is the pressure rate has been very good, consistent, one of the best in football for Seattle, and they haven't had to bring a whole lot of extra guys for it. Is this a spot that you see them prodding at the way that you saw Houston do it and the way that you saw Denver do it, to where there's a focus there up front?
Yeah, absolutely. I would even add the Chargers to that as well, because Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald are friends, and they run a very similar scheme. If there's any postseason performance that is most applicable to analyzing this game, it would be that Chargers defense, which comes from this fruit from the same tree. Jesse's a Michigan guy, Baltimore guy, they're all running the same thing. So in the way those guys got after him, Chargers, they didn't lose that game because their defense couldn't get to Drake Maye. It's because Justin couldn't move the ball. So that's the weak spot of this Patriots team. I think Drake's really good. I'm actually higher than their receivers, more than some people would be, just because I see the plays that they make. And if you need any evidence, go look at the 3 touchdown catches from the Houston game in the playoffs. Those are big boy catches on an island with elite defensive backs, and Booty and Douglas and Diggs all just delivered in the red zone, very clutch plays. But you got to be able to have time to get the ball to those guys. And Drake has not had that. He's taken a bunch of sacks in the postseason. He took a bunch of sacks in the regular season. So it's not as if these are outlier statistics that we've seen in the 3-game sample. And like you mentioned, the Seahawks front is just as good as every front Drake has played, just as good as that Chargers front, just as good as that Houston front, just as good as that Denver front. But why I bring up the Chargers more is I think they and the Seahawks get at the quarterback a different way. Whereas D'Amico Ryans can just say, hey, Will Anderson, hey, Daniil Hunter, just go beat your guy.
Speed and power, bro, go.
Yeah, we'll get it. You do the spin move, you do the power move, you guys meet at the quarterback, ready, break. Whereas the Chargers, mix it up a little bit more. Denver can do the same thing as Houston. Hey, Nick, hey, Coop, go. Just go meet at the quarterback. Seahawks mix it up, and it makes it harder to prepare for as well. Who's looping, who's coming, who's stunting, who's just getting a straight bull rush. This is going to be just as hard a test as Drake has had in the postseason, and he struggled to get to this point as well. So I expect more of the same, even with a couple weeks to prepare.
Yeah, 15 sacks in these 3 games. I think the only one that's been sacked more is Joe Burrow during his Super Bowl run. I think he was at 19. So who knows? Seattle could help Drake pass that Joe Burrow record. You mentioned the deep ball with Booty and Pop and these guys. I want to mention that from both sides, and I want your take, because these are the 2 best really deep ball throwers statistically in football this season, with the way Sam has thrown the football, and I think completing 52% of his deep ball passes. passes. Maye's right behind him at 52.1, and he's at 52.3. Who do you think has the advantage in maybe taking some of these shots? We know Maye has a great touch and a great chemistry with some of those guys, and they've relied on it a lot. And we know what Sam and Jax, as you mentioned, have done. Who do you think has the advantage in maybe taking advantage of a couple of explosive plays, which could be key considering both these defenses are playing really, really, really well right now?
Yeah, this is dang near a push, but I'll give the slight nod to Sam because he's of the weapons being thrown to. Jax is by far and away the best pass catcher in this game. Like, no knock to Booty, who for some reason is the only guy who can catch a deep ball on Derek Stingley, which is crazy. He just does it to him every year when no one else can. Yeah, so, but...
And they'll go after your corners. Like, they didn't avoid Surtain. They didn't avoid Sting. Like, they will go after your corners.
Yeah, and they're really, like I said, they're a really good unit. I'm really high on them. Matt Collins makes like clutch catches every time I watch their tape. Diggs is real clutch. I loved his response from, I think after the Houston game, he got asked, how'd you make that catch, the touchdown catch? And he looked at the reporters and said, with my hands. Great answer. Love that. Very Kawhi Leonard, Greg Popovich-y type of answer. But what Jax and Sam have had this year is just special. It was the best connection in the league. Stafford and Puka was good as well. If someone wants to make that case, that's fine. But for me, for my money, Jackson Sam was just nails. Whether they're going deep, whether they're going in the middle of the field, whether they're going underneath, Jackson's a great yak guy. I just think that what Sam and Jackson have done this year, it in combination with how Clint has been dialing it up, is just special. And then we saw in the conference championship that if you get caught sleeping or worried too much about Jax, well, they have another guy on the outside who runs like 4.3 who can take it to the house from anywhere as well, and Rashid Shaheed. So it's a great question. I would give the slight nod because we've seen this year no one can cover Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, very true. I just want to point out, was it an outlier what happened in the championship game with the way Stafford was able to go downfield, or what did you see when you broke that game down about how they were able to be successful? It was like 223 yards in terms of the deep stuff. What happened in the NFC Championship game?
You know what, James? Let me pull up a stat here that I looked this up the other day.
Let's go.
Against the Rams this year, 3-game sample, the Seahawks are allowing 28 points per game, 28 and some change. Against everyone else, they're allowing 15 points per game. So yes, it's very clear that the Rams games are an aberration or outliers, whatever word you want to use, that there's something about the combination of Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, Puka Nacua, and that offensive line that allows Stafford to just operate. I'm sure the Rams are just kicking themselves that they got the performances they did out of Stafford against the number one defense on the road twice and lost by one possession both times, in part because they lost the special teams battle in each of those games. So, yeah, I think the NFC Championship game is not very instructive. I'm sure Patriots fans will probably like it to be, over the next couple of weeks. I don't think it is. There's only been 2 teams to score more than 22 points against the Seahawks, the Bucks in Week 5, and then the Rams twice. And I think if the Bucks were to play the Seahawks tomorrow, they would not score 22. I feel very confident about that. So, yeah, it's a complete outlier, I believe. The data says it. The tape says it. Stafford is just a different beast because they've played other teams that have quarterbacks who can sling it down the field. For sure. And they just haven't. Puka is the only number one receiver that they played who actually operated at his normal average or higher against the Seahawks. Go look at every other number one receiver. When they played the Seahawks, they didn't do what they normally do. Puka did that and beyond. So I think that what they did against the Seahawks is an outlier and cannot really be applied to analyzing what's going to happen in the Super Bowl.
Got it. Okay, that makes the offseason probably even more difficult for Matthew Stafford and company right now that they're not in this game.
You can't play much better than Stafford did in those
he was
two
awesome,
in Seattle.
Man. He was so good in Seattle.
No turnovers, 1 sack, and he had 1 sack in 3 games against the number one defense. No turnovers, a bunch of touchdowns on the road twice. I mean, you can't ask for much more than a guy at age 37 and probably one of the toughest road environments in the league. 2 night games in Seattle. I mean, I almost feel bad for him. I still want to go to the Super Bowl, but I almost feel bad for a guy playing that well and you can't win because your team gives up a punt return on one game and then your guy just bobbles one, until you lose special teams twice.
Hey, all three phases, man. That's what Seattle's done all year. It's a big part. All right, before we go, this was an interesting one that I had being in that Broncos locker room this past week leading into that game, and the respect that group kind of had for Ramondre Stevenson, not just in terms of running the football between the tackles. They think he's a better back than maybe a lot of other people maybe around the league think. And he's been on a bit of a run here the last several weeks as opposed to the earlier part of the season. But what was pointed out to me was how good him and Travion Henderson are at noticing what you're doing defensively, where the pressure's coming from, where you're dropping your linebackers, and getting into the progression very quickly and filling that middle intermediate kind of area in a little bit of the pass game. I see that being a spot that wouldn't bother Seattle. I'm not entirely sure what you think, but in terms of where they are in the middle of the field, the running back matchup there, not just running the ball, but catching the ball. How do you see that in terms of how Seattle defends that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, that plays into Seattle's strength, though. I think their front seven has multiple all-pro players on it. Like, if you count Devin Witherspoon basically is playing a nickel. You got him, second-team All-Pro. Ernest Jones, inside linebacker, second-team All-Pro. Leonard Williams, second-team All-Pro. So you talk about the spine of the team, which kind of gets lost in roster construction and focus on edge, corner. Like, no,
glad you said that.
That spine, like safeties, nickels, interior defensive linemen, that spine is how you get your toughness. Like, those guys on the edges will get paid on the perimeter as well. They make the splash plays, but the guys in the spine make the tough plays. And that's what the Seahawks have. You know, they have Nicky Manwari as well playing nickel. He can guard. He had back-to-back plays in the conference championship. Ronnie Rivers out route, PBU. Puka Nacua out route, PBU. You know, like, he can guard whoever if you put them near the line. And I think the Seahawks will probably say this week and next week as well, when you talk about whether in the run game or in the pass game, stopping running backs, and they go look at their numbers against Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey. Like, they played some very good running backs this year and held them to some pretty pedestrian outings relative to what we've seen those guys be able to do this year. Very similar to what I said about number one receivers and their numbers being lower against Seattle. Go look at Christian, go look at Bijan, go look at JT. Their numbers were not all pro caliber when they had good games, but they were not all pro caliber when they played the Seahawks. And there's other backs on that list as well. So I'm high on Ramondre. I thought Travion Henderson was a great pick. He's very explosive. But the Seahawks have played a bunch of explosive backs. And the reason they're here is because they were able to hold those guys in check.
Yeah, I haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher this season, right? One of two teams that can say that. I think them in Jacksonville, I want to say, is maybe the other one.
They haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher since last year against Buffalo, I believe.
There it is.
Like week 8.
Step further. Okay. Season and
it's
a
been
half,
a while.
man. That's been a while.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Mike, awesome stuff as always. Appreciate it. Make sure everybody goes to The Athletic, reads everything that Mike is putting up between now and Super Bowl Sunday, because it's going to be a lot and it's going to be outstanding. Appreciate it, man. I know you're on dad duty as well, so thank you for taking the time and joining Scoop City, brother.
Oh, yeah. Anytime for you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, moving on our Thursday Scoop City road trip. It has been Chad Graff has joined us a million times on this show, and it's been because the Patriots have been red hot. They've been worth talking about, Chad, and now they're in the Super Bowl. I want to start with how we got here. Michael-Shawn Dugar on the show today, asking him who is essentially the centerpiece of how the Seahawks got here. He had an answer. I will ask you, who is the centerpiece of why the Patriots are in the Super Bowl?
I'm going to duck your question and say that you can't pick one. It is two people have driven this all the way, which is Mike Vrabel and Drake Maye. Like, this has been a tandem in terms of the Patriots have gone into a lot of games where they did not have the better roster. And including in this Super Bowl, I think you would take 2 through 53 of the other team. But with Drake Maye playing like an MVP, with Mike Vrabel totally flipping the culture, it has been those two guys elevating a roster that I don't think you would look at and say, oh, these guys should be in the Super Bowl. How are we going to get around this O-line and this edge rusher? How are we going to scheme around that? They don't have that. What they have is a culture of belief with Mike Vrabel and a quarterback who is playing better than any other quarterback in the NFL. At least in the regular season, we can discuss what has happened in the postseason, but it has been those two throughout.
Okay. Okay. I believe he's going to go with John Schneider, has put all of it together for
he's
Seattle.
He's going to follow the instructions and pick one person.
Yeah, he did. Some people follow the rules. You mentioned Drake Maye in the postseason. We have to start there. One, health. Everybody was like, the shoulder. Tell me how that is, because they're going through practices in Foxborough now. And then two, obviously the defenses play a part in who he's gone against with the Chargers and with the Texans and with the Broncos, a couple of the best in football. And then Seattle is right there with them. Are we worried we're going to see the same, or what has happened in the playoffs that maybe makes Patriots fans nervous that this isn't what we saw at an MVP level like you mentioned during the regular season? How do we get that MVP Drake Maye to play in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, Drake Maye's statistics in the playoffs, totally pedestrian. Not what we saw from his MVP level regular season. But also worth noting, this run of defenses he's faced is insane. If he wins the Super Bowl, if the Patriots go on to win next weekend, he will be the first quarterback ever to beat 4 top 10 defenses based on scoring defense on the road to a Super Bowl. So started with the Chargers, really good defense with Jesse Minter. On to the Texans, who are either 1 or 2 with the Seahawks, depending on how you look at it. That Broncos defense, unbelievable. There was a really vulnerable moment captured by the team and the mic'd up videos when he's on the sideline with Josh McDaniels and he's frustrated and snowing and his shoulder hurts and all this is going on and the defense is giving him nothing and he's like, good God, this is hard. Like, just admitting that, which is so like
I loved it.
Open. It was refreshing. Like it kind of revealed like this is a 23-year-old at heart. Like, yes, he has been mature and he has done all of these things. He's a 23-year-old who's never played 21 games in a season before, as he will this year, who has never like gone on a run like this. This is different for him. And so this defense is going to be so hard against the Seahawks. And that's why injury is part of the discussion. Drake Maye was limited on the Wednesday injury report with this right throwing shoulder injury. And so I don't think this is something that's going to affect him next week even, and certainly not in the game. But I wouldn't be surprising if he's limited all this week leading into the trip out to San Francisco. So I don't think that really impacts his preparation too much. But if he's limited next week, all of a sudden I think alarm bells start to go off and you start to have some concern.
Yeah, we know next week there's only one person that gets to watch the practice, and that's the pool reporter. And so a lot fewer eyes, and we'll all be reading that report. And it is interesting, though, the limited of this week, though, right, Chad? Because a lot of teams, vast majority over the years and all the Super Bowls I've covered, is install everything you can while you're still at your home stadium, at your home facility, fine-tune it, tinker when you're in that week of the Super Bowl. So I know there's a lot that teams want to accomplish, and if your quarterback's limited in some capacity, could impact some things. Some teams like to go full pads during that week for a day. We'll see a way Mike Vrabel approaches it. You mentioned the shoulder, and we're looking at it, and we know that Drake has one of the best deep balls in all of football. It's the touch that I've always told, and the chemistry that he has with these guys. How important are explosive plays for the Patriots to be able to come away with a win in this one? It almost seems paramount that they have to get a couple to be against this defense to have a shot.
It's totally how the Patriots are built. They have to be able to hit the deep ball and have to have explosives. Like, this is not the kind of offense that, we kind of saw from the Rams against the Seahawks, where they were going on those longer drives and hitting Nakua for 7 yards and like slowly, more methodically moving the ball down the field. The Patriots live with explosives. They will try trick plays. They hit the flea flicker to Mac Hollins that we saw in the AFC Championship game, which was one of the only kind of like touch passes that Drake Maye threw deep downfield. And so rewatching that game, thinking about his injury, and some of this may have been the snow, the weather, the wind, whatever, but the place where he had to like drive the ball on a 7-yard, hitch route or something, those are the ones that he kind of struggled in. When he needed a little bit of touch going over the top on the flea flicker to Mac Hollins, that was a perfectly thrown ball. And so I wonder, maybe it was the snow, maybe it was other things, but I wonder if that's where the shoulder injury may have showed up, is on like really fighting through the wind on a line drive pass. We will see, but That would be a good thing, I think, for the Patriots, because they have to have Drake being able to throw and hit that deep ball. Kayshon Boutte's been their deep threat wide receiver. They've ranked top 5 in explosives all throughout the season. Even their running game has been a little bit boom or bust. We've seen Travion Henderson. He's like the epitome of a boom or bust running back. Yeah. It seems like it's either 55 yards and a touchdown or 0 yards. Part of why he hasn't played as much in the playoffs. So the Patriots offense lives and dies on explosive plays. They have to hit them against the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think we should make a bigger point. In all honesty, I know it sounds weird, a bigger point of the weather, but 2 of these playoff games were played in very difficult conditions for Drake Maye in throwing the football. That game against Houston and that game against Denver. Christian Gonzalez, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were just like, this dude's really good, man. Like, this is a really good corner. Do you think there's a manner in which they follow JSN? I mean, he has a larger share of what they do in the passing offense than anybody else in football. I mean, he is the guy, and Clint Kubiak will move him around even into the running back spot. He'll go everywhere to try to find matchups. How do you think they slow him down, and how does Christian Gonzalez play into that?
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup because this is a little bit different than the Belichick Patriots, where the Belichick Patriots would take their best corner, think of Gilmore at the end, and just, we are going to travel and we are going to shut this guy down. We're going to take away your best receiver and make you beat us left-handed. I kind of thought the Patriots would do that. If you think back to when they signed Carlton Davis, kind of another good man-to-man corner, Mike Vrabel stood up and said, hey, we're going to play cat defense, as in, you got that cat, you got that cat, let's go play defense. They haven't really done that a ton this season. It's been sort of league average man-to-man rate. They've played a lot more zone, and they've been hesitant to take Christian Gonzalez and just have him travel around. Mike Vrabel talked about it in terms of, we don't want him necessarily getting into the slot because that can change up a bunch of other things. So they've been hesitant to do it, but if there's a team you do it against, it's probably the Seahawks. And so that is going to be like one of those interesting first quarter tells that I think as Kubiak is trying to figure out what's going on the other sideline, I think we'll probably see JSN move around so that they can get a tell in those first 2 drives. Like, hey, is Christian Gonzalez following him around everywhere, or are they playing more as they've done all regular season? Of course, these Patriots are different, but what made the Patriots such a good Super Bowl team under Belichick was they were willing to throw out everything that they did in the regular season. Think back to that Rams Super Bowl, McVay's first one. They were a man team. All they did was play man defense all year long. They get to that Super Bowl and they're like, oh, Sean McVay will carve us if we play man defense. Switch to his own defense in 2 weeks, flip everything that they do. That's what made them successful. And now I'm curious what Mike Vrabel's staff does with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the thing that everybody needs to remember, and I've always talked to defensive coordinators, and so few guys are actually shadow guys in the NFL these days. I think Pat Surtain kind of does it, but very few guys do it. It's not just the guy that's shadowing needs to know everything. Everybody else in the secondary then has to move. If you move into the slot with somebody or you move here, everybody else now has to play a different thing. So it's not just your top corner having to play in those different areas of the field. It's everybody else adjusting on your secondary as well. But we'll see how Mike Vrabel and company kind of handle it. I think it's going to be fascinating. That cat and mouse game, I think, to me, is the one to watch. That's going to be a lot of fun. Where do you think the Patriots have the edge? Because a lot of people say that Seattle is the most complete team in football. So, which part are you looking at going, that's an advantage for New England?
I agree that the Seahawks are the most complete team in football. And again, like so many other Patriots matchups, if you're looking at the roster and ranking 1 through 53, I think you take 2 through 52 from the Seahawks. But I think Drake Maye is probably number 1 in this. Now, if there's a spot that I'm really intrigued because I think that the Patriots can have an advantage, it is, surprisingly, on a spot on the defensive side of the ball. Their defense has played so well the last 5 weeks. And yes, there are some caveats. That includes the Jets, the Dolphins as they were halfway to Cancun, the Texans with CJ Stroud playing terribly, Jarrett Stidham in the snow. Yes, normal caveats. But the defense has had their best 5-game stretch since 2019 with Belichick, and that defense was humming. So that puts into perspective just how good they've been. And where they can, I think, take advantage of the Seahawks is the Seahawks have done a lot to improve their offensive line. You think back to like 3-4 years ago, it was, this offensive line's going to hold them back. Now they're solid. It's similar to the progress that the Patriots have made. But I think they're a little bit weak in the interior. And if there's a spot that the Patriots are good, it is in their interior pass rush. They don't have Max Crosby, Myles Garrett on the edge, but They have Milton Williams playing really well at defensive tackle. Christian Barmore playing really well next to him. They've developed some depth with Durden and Tonga behind them. And so it would not surprise me if we're looking at a recipe for the Patriots to win. I think we're going to need to see a lot of interior pressure from Milton Williams, who obviously played very well in the Super Bowl last year, and Christian Barmore kind of getting that interior disruption from Sam Darnold. And to take it one step further, we've seen Darnold struggle with that. Like, think about what the Vikings did last offseason, last March. They spent so much money to improve the interior of their offensive line because they just watched that fall apart with Darnold at the end of their regular season. We've seen Darnold struggle with that, and I think that's a spot where the Patriots can have some success.
Dude, Milton Williams has been outstanding. I mean, he really has. And I love that he admitted it. I took the bag. I went to do it. But at the same time, if you asked everybody on that defense or Vic Fangio or any of them when I covered the Eagles during that run, a lot of people say we don't win a Super Bowl in Philadelphia 2 years ago if we didn't have Milton Williams. And it wasn't the name on the defense, right? That wasn't the name in Philadelphia. That's how good he actually and truly is. All right, before we go, I'd be remiss, Chad, if I just didn't mention Bill Belichick to you. And what is the vibe in Foxborough with the biggest story in the NFL as we're leading into the Super Bowl that Bill, with his 6 titles and add 2 more as a DC in New York, has not gotten in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. What is the buzz in Foxborough? What is the conversations you've had? And I'd just like to know what the environment is there around that building.
So 2 things. One is the total laughable nature of Bill Belichick not being a Hall of Famer. I get that there's nuance to this and the change in the voting process and the removal of the waiting period, which I think impacts a guy like Belichick a lot. If you remove the emotion of the UNC stint this year, of the girlfriend, of whatever else, and have a 5-year waiting period, I would venture a guess that he would have gotten in, even with the same people who voted no this year, that maybe 4 years from now would vote yes. So there's the laughable nature of it all. But, and this is where I think it gets a little bit tricky for here in Foxborough and for the Patriots, kind of the unfortunate nature of this, and we'll see how it plays out, is we know that at least one of the other 4 finalists is going to get in. One of them is Robert Kraft. We know about the relationship with Kraft and Belichick and how things ended. We know that Kraft has been a candidate many times to get into the Hall of Fame and has so far not gotten in. I think it's a little bit unfortunate if it plays out this way that maybe Kraft gets in on Thursday and then perhaps is overshadowed by the Belichick of it all, even if Kraft had nothing to do with that. That would be an unfortunate part of it, but is a dynamic that's at play as we go forward of who's actually going to get in. Like, one of these guys is going to get in. It might be Kraft. It might be somebody else. So Kraft put out a statement kind of blasting, where things stood with that whole voting process and calling it ludicrous that Belichick didn't get in, which I think was the right thing to do. But also, their relationship didn't end well. That's fair to say. Yeah. And it would be a little bit weird if Kraft now gets in as Belichick does not. And frankly, this has a chance to be like a really bad stretch for Belichick to not get in. Maybe Kraft gets in. And then, if the Patriots win the Super Bowl, Tom Brady left without him, won a Super Bowl. Robert Kraft replaced as a coach, gets into the Super Bowl. And if he's sitting in Chapel Hill, like, man, things have not gone great for me in the last 10 days. That's a different dynamic that's at play, even if we can all safely say, yeah, of course the guy is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, unbelievable. Just unreal. Everybody go check. We did a deep dive on this topic with Seth Wickersham, who broke the news. That's on the YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out. And Chad, Seth had an interesting comment. I thought this was really poignant. And the way you mentioned Kraft, I'm hoping it's not Robert Kraft and that it's somebody else. Because the way Seth said it was, it's actually might be good that the news is out now and that it has died down over the period of time, and say another one of the contributors gets in outside of Robert Kraft, it's almost run its course, and that person, when they get in at NFL honors, is not just fully overshadowed, that it's not Bill Belichick. And I thought that was an interesting kind of look at it as well. But if it is Robert Kraft, then it all gets spun back up again into an entire thing. And it is, oh man, this has been, nothing short of storylines in Foxborough, nothing short of why we talk so frequently, Chad. Enjoy Super Bowl week, enjoy San Francisco. We'll be talking to you, and appreciate it as always, my friend.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
All right, we heard from both reporters with these respective teams, but let's continue to talk about the 2 Super Bowl teams. That's the Seahawks. That's the Patriots. They both have defensive head coaches. What did that mean to Zach Kiefer? He wrote about it. We're going to talk about it and what trend now is starting in the NFL. Next on Scoop City. All right, our Thursday road trip here on Scoop City continues around the NFL with our good buddy Zach Kiefer joins us, and he has a brilliant article on The Athletic. You have to go check this out. It is really focusing on the two coaches that are going to be in the Super Bowl, Mike Vrabel and Mike McDonald, and what we learned from the NFL playoffs. Seahawks and Patriots bucked coaching trends in rapid rebuilds. And this is why I wanted to have this conversation with you, Zach, honestly, because of the way that these two teams have built their organizations with these respective head coaches and how they've gone about it. I kind of want to get the crux of the entire article from you as we start about why this kind of piqued your interest and what you saw when you kind of broke it down from both organizations.
I think it's great, James, when you take a 30,000-foot view and look at the macro moves that led us here, right? So as our colleague Mike Sando wrote on Sunday night, might be the most unlikely Super Bowl matchup we've had in 50 years. Who had the Patriots and the Seahawks in this game back in August, back 18 months ago, right? Not a lot of people, if anyone. So I wanted to figure out how they got here. And I came back to two people. And I think these two people are most responsible for these hires that went against the grain, right? We'll start with the obvious one. The Seahawks were hiring a coach for the first time in almost 15 years, right? Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing that their GM, John Schneider, did and admitted to afterward was he listened to this podcast, and the podcast was about hiring.
Oh, I thought you meant this one. Okay, go ahead.
But imagine that. An NFL GM is listening to a random podcast in late January about hiring. And the question that stuck with him was, who is going to reshape the market? Now, remember, he's in this division with Sean McVay and the Rams, Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, two of the very best at what they do, that offensive-minded, which is really, tilted the way every NFL team thinks about the hiring process for the last 10 years. So he did the opposite. He found his McVay of defense, his Kyle Shanahan of defense. And the word that stuck with me most was when he hired Mike McDonald, he said he's a disruptor. So he found a guy that can go toe-to-toe with them. And instead of chasing them, instead of finding Shanahan Jr. or Sean McVay Jr., which so many teams in the league have done, they found offensive minds that aren't quite as good. I think they're the best two, right? Mm-hmm. He found someone that was better or as good as them on the other side of the ball that really got in their way. And it's very poetic that in their way to the Super Bowl, the Seahawks have beat the 49ers and have beat the Rams. And I think this is a really good lesson for all these teams right now that are hiring coaches right now. Now, 8 of the jobs have been filled. Mm-hmm. 2 of them are still open, but we'll have more next year. And if they're just going to chase the next great young offensive mind that's not as good as Shanahan or McVay, are they really doing the right thing? And the other thing he deserves credit for is identifying the quickest way to get to the Super Bowl. You have to win your division. You have to be able to host playoff games, which is such an advantage. And he really found a counterpunch, and I give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's stick there in Seattle first with what Mike has done and the messaging that he's brought. I think he obviously is, in terms of acumen, like just one of the best defensive minds in football. We've seen that at every stop that he's had. And then you look at the way they've built it around him, and it's like, hey, remember when you played with Kyle Hamilton and what you did on that Baltimore Ravens defense? Here's Nicky Morey. Let's do that. And let's figure out how we can have these chess pieces on our side of the ball to go against your chess pieces on so much offensive-driven football. And I think what John Schneider has done has just been outstanding as an executive. I think you would probably agree with me there. And every move that he's probably made in recent memory has been, taking the risk on Jackson Smith and Jigba and taking the chance on Sam Darnold. And all of these things have really paid off. And Mike McDonald's at the top of it. I am curious what your thought is then. So many people I talk to around the league are going, Jesse Minter was kind of the next Mike McDonald. And you look at what the Ravens have done and going and bringing him in, somebody that, yes, they're familiar with. But as I asked around the league about Jesse, Zach, it was like, he is kind of that counterpunch. He is that guy that makes offenses kind of play to how he dictates a game with coverage and how he attacks protection and stuff like that. And I've been told he's a star in the making. Do you think this is kind of, you mentioned the next cycle coming up, like Jesse might be the next move after teams see the success of a Mike McDonald in Seattle?
I've heard the same things about Jesse Minter from those who know him and for those who faced him. So we're on par with that. And I think the lesson here is let's look at the 10 hirings that are going to happen by the end of this coaching cycle. I think 3 of them stand out to me. The lesson from the Seahawks is identify what you want and be willing to take the risk. I think the Giants deserve a lot of credit for all the screw-ups they've had over the past. They knew what they wanted. It was one guy, and they went and got him. And that runs parallel to what Robert Kraft did 2 years ago when he realized that the guy he hired to replace Bill Belichick wasn't it. And it takes some guts to admit that, 1, and 2, to move off of him in 12 months, right? But he knew what he wanted. It was Mike Vrabel or nothing. And Mike Vrabel had a lot of interest, and he went out and got him. So the Giants did the same thing with John Harbaugh. It was Harbaugh, and then it was everybody else, and they got him. I think the Falcons deserve a lot of credit, too, for getting Kevin Stefanski, because the longer this goes, the Browns are going to have to settle for maybe their second or third choice. Who knows what the Raiders are going to have to do? You can throw the Cardinals in there as well. But I think the teams that have identified the guy that they want, and doesn't it feel like to you that the Baltimore Ravens, when they moved on from John Harbaugh, Jesse Minter was number 1 on their list, not number 2, not number 3, and they got it done in a very Ravens way. It was very direct. It was very quick. It was very seamless. You just see how good operations work in these types of crisis situations and how the bad ones don't. And I got to give the Giants credit, and I got to give the Falcons credit, but I think the Ravens are the perfect example. I think Jesse Minter could be the next Mike McDonald, and I think the Ravens are really smart for the way they handled this.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Let's kind of look at both of these guys. And you mentioned defensive side of the ball for Mike and defensive side of the ball for Mike in this Super Bowl. How much have you seen their qualities, though, as the CEO of these billion-dollar organizations, right? And what they bring on top of just knowing football. I don't know if anybody knows the NFL rule book better than Mike Vrabel, that's a head coach in the NFL, and playing those things to his advantage in situational football. But the overarching aspect of both of them in their buildings, if you talk to anybody in Seattle, and it's like, you can't walk 5 feet without another saying that Mike has that he wants all of you to see. And Vrabel has a very distinct message that is portrayed through the rest of the building. It feels like we got away from the CEO overarching both sides of the ball part for a little while. Do you think these guys represent how you can kind of do that on the defensive side of the ball, but still achieve that CEO aspect?
Yeah, that's interesting because it's the first time 2 defensive coaches, if you want to call them that, though they're coaches of the whole team, have faced off since Dan Quinn and Belichick in that Falcons-Patriots Super Bowl. Yeah. That was a long time ago. The league has changed a lot. I want to start with Vrabel because I lived the other side of Vrabel. I covered the Colts for a long time. And the Colts had an owner who was very, very jealous of Mike Vrabel's ability to get the best out of his team.
Really?
Now, the Colts felt like they had more talent, and they could not beat the Titans when it mattered. And Jim Irsay was enamored with Mike Vrabel in a lot of ways, and he would bring it up. He would bring it up that our team isn't tough enough. They're not tough enough like Mike Vrabel's team. And James, you know this from being in locker rooms, and the great thing about locker rooms is they don't lie. You can tell when a player has connected with his coach, and that is an overwhelming sentiment you get from Patriots players now and Titans players back in the day. And you think about this, I mean, that translates. Like, that translates whether it's an offensive coach or defensive coach. That stuff you can't fabricate. The Titans have won 6 games since Mike Vrabel was fired. That's been 2 years. The Patriots have won 6 games since December 21st, and they're getting knocked on their schedule and all that. But this guy wins because he connects with his players. And that's a really hard thing to do. A lot of people think it's easy, but these are grown men making millions of dollars. And he is one of the best I've seen, certainly in the contemporary game at doing that. So I give the Patriots a lot of credit, but there is a secret sauce to what Mike Vrabel does. And it's kind of in that throwback ability to connect with his big guys.
Yeah, it is. And he's one of those guys, if you talk to, and I think you've done the same, is you talk to guys who play for him, it's like, I don't want to let him down. That's kind of like the way that they play. And when you get the compliments from Mike Vrabel, I've gotten them, and they feel better than compliments from other people because he doesn't hand them out. Like, he doesn't throw them out there at all. And so you're like, oh man, my gut feels really good. There's a part of what Vrabel has that I'm kind of curious. Mike McDonald probably is going to have to deal with more so than Mike Vrabel is. And that's the opposite coordinator. And when you look at Josh McDaniels and you look at Steve Spagnuolo or you look at Vic Fangio, these guys are at like the top of their game on their side of the ball, and it just doesn't seem like they are head coaching candidates moving forward. And to me, it was always a cheat code in Kansas City for Andy Reid, going, I never have to worry about A, that side of the ball, or B, that man leaving. I don't know why, but that's the way it's always been with Spags. It seems like Mike Vrabel has that with Josh McDaniels in the way he's developed Drake Maye. But with Clint Kubiak, and being a hot head coaching hire as an offensive-minded guy, like teams still want to make sure they don't get away from, how is he, have to go through an adaptation probably of fixing maybe one side of the ball more than once during his tenure in Seattle, as opposed to what Mike Vrabel has? I think they are a little bit different in that sense, and I'm always feeling like somebody, when you pick on the defensive side of the ball, are now searching for that Josh McDaniels type of recipe, because that's what Belichick had for so long.
I think you used the phrase cheat code. I'm right there with you. I think that was Andy Reid's secret sauce, right? Is the fact that he had a defensive coordinator that was head coaching quality by any metric. And you know how much those guys play for Spags in Kansas City, that was not going to leave, or that interviewed but still was not going to leave. And that's how I think success is sustained in this league. That's how you don't just win one championship. That's how you win a couple. And you're seeing it. I mean, look at Baker Mayfield in Tampa right now. He's on his, I want to say, 8th offensive coordinator in 9 seasons.
I think so.
I mean, that is just, they're just churning through them. And that's going to be a problem, because Clint Kubiak is going to be a head coach. Now, he's not the most outwardly charismatic guy at a podium, but if you go back to what he did last year, those first couple games in New Orleans, they were on fire before Derek Carr got hurt. And then this year, he's done a wondrous job. So I think of it in 2 different ways, right? So for a long time, it was, let's chase the young, hot offensive coach, right? He's going to be the next Sean McVay. The other thing is, we're going to chase the young quarterback and get him on the rookie deal and do what so many have done. Seattle did it backwards, right? They went defensive coach, who they thought was the best. And then they also found a quarterback who another team discarded, who's been just absolutely wonderful for 2 years. I mean, Sam Darnold's got like 60 touchdowns and is like 30-10 or something like that. So I give the Seahawks a lot of credit for bucking convention in so many different ways. And you see it on Sundays. They have the most complete team in football, and they have since September.
Yeah, they do. All right, last question I have for you, because this was posed to me by somebody in the league the other day, and this kind of ties into your article, and I kind of pieced the 2 things together. They were like, when you look at the Denver Broncos, and they have a new ownership regime that has been outstanding so far since the Walton Penner Group took over. I think George Paton has actually done a very, very good job as a personnel and talent evaluator as a general manager. And then you have Sean Payton, obviously, as the man who came in and has changed the culture and has done so much for what they've done, and picked the quarterback in Bo Nix. I'll use both of these organizations and that one as an example of, those are the 4, to me, pillars of success in an NFL organization, right? The ownership, the general manager, the head coach, and the quarterback. Where are we seeing, you think, right now in today's NFL, being the one out of those 4 being the most important?
I almost am tempted to go away from quarterback here and go head coach. I feel like
I am too. That was my answer. Okay.
I'm sitting there watching the games on Sunday, and I'm watching every snap, and I'm thinking about, how are the Patriots here? The Patriots are here before Josh Allen ever makes one Super Bowl. I looked up these stats, and these are going to be so depressing. Like, they've made it to 10 Super Bowls since the Dolphins last won a playoff game. They've made it to 6 Super Bowls since the Jets last made the playoffs. They've made it to 11 since the Bills last made it. And I think collectively, America is rooting for the Bills to make it finally. And they have this Superman at quarterback, and they still haven't made it. And to put a bow on what I'm talking about, this is because Mike McDonald imprinted his fingerprints all over that Seattle team. And it's because Mike Vrabel did the same thing in New England. They won 4 games each of the last 2 years. They were a disaster. And America and the rest of the non-New England area loved the fact that the Patriots were down. And here we are again. They're back in the title game. They just deserve a lot of credit because Mike Vrabel was able to do it. I'm going head coach. In a lot of sports, I don't think coaching matters that much, but I am an Indiana grad, so I will give credit to Curt Cignetti and the national champs, and I'm going to give a lot of credit to Mike Vrabel and Mike McDonald as well. Coaching in football matters like never before.
Yeah, you were there, man, right? You were at the game? How was it?
There. It was a night we will never forget. Let's put it that way. We did not expect to be there our entire lives, and to have it happen like that in a really tough game, for them to come out, it felt like a dream, and we still haven't woken up from it.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. But I'm with you on the head coach. I am. I mean, I think it's the cog in the middle that touches all of them. We need this from ownership. The head coach will get it done in a lot of these instances. The relationship with the general manager and the head coach's relationship with the quarterback, even if you're on the defensive side of the ball. Vrabel has done wonders for Drake Maye, if you ask anybody. It's not just Josh McDaniels. So I think that's why these hires are so important, and that you shouldn't be skewed to just one side of the ball. Zach, appreciate it. I could talk to you forever about ball, and we'll just write another brilliant article, please, and then we'll be back doing this on Scoop City.
I'm heading to Italy to cover the Olympics, so no football for a while.
We'll miss you in San Francisco next week. We'll have you on to talk about Italy. Let's go.
Skiing and snowboarding. I'm going to learn a lot. It's going to be a blast.
I love it, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Teams bucking some of the trends. Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they did go offense, but they did buck the trend in which they've hired usually younger, defensive-minded head coaches. Well, Mike McCarthy's now in his hometown as the head coach. Mike DeFabo was there for the press conference. What does this mean for the Steelers? What does this mean for Aaron Rodgers? He has it all next on Scoop City. Hey guys, it's James Palmer. You listen to us. Now we want to hear from you. We're asking you to fill out a quick survey about you and your podcast habits by going to theathletic.com/survey26. Now, 3 lucky entries will win $100 worth of Amazon vouchers too. So whether you're a longtime listener or a new one, we want your feedback. Go to theathletic.com/survey26. That's theathletic.com/survey26. The link is also in our episode description. All right, joining us on our Thursday road trip we do here at The Athletic on Scoop City, Mike DeFabo joins us as he was at a very big press conference this week. Mike, you're no longer my favorite Mike in Pittsburgh. It's now Mike McCarthy. No, I'm just kidding. He's number 2. You're number 1. What was the first takeaway you gleaned from that press conference about him coming home and maybe him being maybe kind of emotional or open about coaching this team in this city, perhaps?
Yeah, so even before he started his opening statement, he reached down and grabbed a piece of paper. And even before he could get the first words out, he started to get emotional. And it just stuck out to me so much that this was a guy who grew up in the Greenfield neighborhood, which is a very blue-collar part of a very blue-collar city. And his father was a firefighter, police officer, and bar owner. Which, in a city like Pittsburgh, that's like the Pittsburgh Triple Crown.
It really
they call it a shot in a beer town here. And for the guy to literally own a bar really takes it to the next level. And so, he talked about, his quote was pretty great. It was kind of a bar. He said, for a lot of coaches and players, when you put on different colors for at the first time, it takes time to feel comfortable in them. But to put on the colors that you've been wearing since you were taken home from the hospital, it hits different. Like you feel comfortable in it. And I thought that was just such a very cool moment. And it felt like a family reunion. Like I was telling other people, I felt like I was in someone's grandma's basement in Greenfield because like there were like 20 McCarthys rolling in, packing the front 2 rows. So very much an emotional day for Mike McCarthy where he feels like he's back at home coaching the team he grew up rooting for.
Yeah, this is huge for Mike, obviously, and huge for his family, like you mentioned, rolling deep, and I love it. But you would have to say this doesn't play a major factor in the reason Mike won this job. It might play some factor that, oftentimes when guys understand the area, understand the climate, understand everything about it, also plays a little bit of a factor. But the other aspects of why Mike won the job from the Steelers side of things, when you did the digging, Mike, was specifically what?
Really, I think a lot of it has to do with the quarterback situation. We've talked in the past that the Steelers were in this situation where they were looking for a head coach because they failed repeatedly to find the successor to Ben Roethlisberger. Mm-hmm. So history and tradition would tell you the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go out. They're going to hire some 30 or 40-year-old coach who's a defensive coordinator most likely, and he's going to provide stability and continuity for decades. Mm-hmm. But the Steelers very much flipped the script and went the opposite direction. They hired a coach who's much older. They also hired a coach who was on the other side of the ball. And that was intentional because they recognized that quarterback's the most important position in the game. And it's also one of the biggest shortcomings of the Steelers of the last 5 to 7 years is finding that successor to Ben Roethlisberger. So, in the short term, it seems like they might have to put another veteran Band-Aid on this season, but in the longer term, maybe 2027, that's when you're going to be counting on Mike McCarthy to use his experience working with quarterbacks to develop that next future franchise quarterback.
Do you see Will Howard playing any factor in this? I had heard that Mike liked him. I mean, obviously he's a lower round draft pick, but at the same time, many guys have succeeded from there. Is there any element of Will Howard in this development, possibly?
Well, first of all, let me correct your pronunciation. In Pittsburgh, they say Will Howard.
Yeah,
it's just one syllable.
Yeah.
So, and that was pretty great. Mike McCarthy has very much the Pittsburgh accent. It was Will Howard and Omar Khan.
Perfect.
So he very much played to his base with his accent. But he said that he does have some excitement for Will Howard. And I don't know that he's going to be, really the second question that Mike McCarthy was asked was very pointedly, do you want Aaron Rodgers here? And he said, definitely. And he acknowledged that he's already spoken with Aaron. So it sure seems to me like the Steelers would like Aaron Rodgers to come back next year. And really the ball is in Aaron Rodgers' court. But they still like Will Howard. And I think that they're going to continue to evaluate this year's draft class and potentially take a swing, somewhere in the middle rounds. And then it still seems like eventually, maybe 2027, when the quarterback class is stronger, they're going to make that aggressive swing and try to find that, legitimate high-end talent that's worth trading up for.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like where were the other candidates in terms of how close they were to Mike McCarthy? Or did he start to run away with this? Because you've mentioned, he breaks the mold, and obviously this is one that doesn't happen very often. But what we've seen in the past about what Pittsburgh's been interested in head coaching hires, we are looking in one direction. Would any of those guys come close to Mike? Or did he start to just kind of win this once he started having those interactions with Omar Khan and company and people he knows in that building?
Well, I think one of the criticisms that people here in Pittsburgh have had of this search process is it was quick and it didn't appear to be very extensive. I know that they interviewed virtually, about 8 candidates, but they only hosted 3 in person. They brought in Brian Flores, Anthony Weaver, and then the guy they ultimately hired in Mike McCarthy. And so it sure seemed like Mike McCarthy was a front runner from the very beginning. And it seemed like very quickly they identified him as the next coach, and they decided, look, let's not wait any further. This is the guy that we want. Let's move forward. And I guess, there really has been a lot of negative public reaction here in Pittsburgh where people wanted a more exhaustive search process. They at least wanted the Steelers to bring in Chris Shula and see what he had to say in person. They wanted Nathan Scheelhaus to be given the opportunity to impress them in an interview. But you look at it and they just went with experience, and they went with a guy who's developed quarterbacks, and ultimately they felt like that outweighed every other factor.
Okay. Makes sense. It's actually the direction that honestly we've seen from this hiring cycle, right? A lot of cycles in past have been, guys coming in and it's the young mind and it's the first time head coach. And this cycle has been a lot of guys that have had previous head coaching experience. So it does kind of line up, and we know the way the league works and it's cyclical like that. How else do we look at this staff moving forward and this roster? Did you get the sense from Mike coming in anything that you can tell us in terms of maybe where they look to improve immediately in terms of staff, in terms of roster?
Well, I think one thing that's really critical for the Pittsburgh Steelers and for Mike McCarthy is hiring a really good defensive coordinator. A lot of people have compared Mike McCarthy to Sean Payton because they're very similar age. Sean Payton is offensive minded. He found that future franchise quarterback in Bo Nix that he can develop and elevate the team. At the same time, the Denver Broncos are in the position that they were, and they were competitive in a game with their backup quarterback because they have Vance Joseph. And because Vance Joseph is an elite defensive play caller and excellent defensive mind. And in a similar way, I think it's very important for Mike McCarthy to find who is going to be the man leading his defense. And one name to at least know, and I know that he's coming to Pittsburgh, flying in on Thursday, and I'm not sure exactly whether his interview's Thursday or Friday, is Patrick Graham, former or current defensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders. He's an interesting guy just because he's worked with so many established and well-respected defensive minds, dating back to his early days with Bill Belichick, where he learned how to beat defenses or make the opponent beat you with their offhand. He's worked with Steve Spagnuolo, where he's learned those pressure packages. He's worked with Brian Flores, where more pressure, but then also learning some of the quarters things that are so popular right now in today's world. So he's worked with a lot of different, very well-respected defensive minds, and in his own right is very well-respected. He even had, I believe, a couple head coaching interviews during this cycle, in addition to some interest from the Commanders. I'm not saying he's going to get the job. I'm not reporting that quite yet, but that is definitely a name to circle, and someone that I wonder if those dots could be connected sooner than later.
No, I mean, that's always the yin to your yang. And when I always think about this, Mike, it's always going, when you look at Mike McCarthy's resume, you go, it's pretty damn good. Like there's a lot of winning that's gone on there with Mike McCarthy, but it seems like Pittsburgh is going to need to be won over just a little bit by the homegrown man. I don't know. We'll see. Appreciate it, man. We'll stay abreast with you as we go through the rest of this staff as it comes together for Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Steelers are always a story, so I'm sure we'll be talking before too long about the staff, Aaron Rodgers, quarterbacks, something like that.
Your car, all these things. We'll cover it all.
We'll do the full, what's it called, a 50-point inspection? Yeah, we'll do the same thing with the Steelers that we do with my car.
Got it. Best. All right, that'll do it for our Thursday trip around the NFL on Scoop City. Our road trip is complete. Thank you to Michael-Shawn Dugar, to Chad Graff, to Mike DeFabo, to Zach Kiefer. Make sure you stay tuned to Scoop City all throughout Super Bowl week. We'll have reports with both teams. We'll have reports from Diana Rossini, who'll be all over Santa Clara, giving us different news and nuggets from the Pro Bowlers, from the Super Bowl, all sorts of different things. Stay tuned to Scoop City. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching Scoop City. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment. New episodes of Scoop City drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.